Yeah, we've seen religion completely change from one thing to another that's completely different, all in the span of maybe a decade or less. It was back in the 1970s when the government started applying pressure to schools that were ran by the church to stop segregating students. If they didn't stop segregating white kids and black kids, the government was going to take the church's tax-exempt status away. Now, around this time, there was a fella named Paul Weyrich, and Paul Weyrich believed that the church should be more involved in U.S. politics, and that a really great rallying point for the church to get involved in politics would be abortion, women's reproductive freedom. But every time he pitched this idea to the church, they always told him the same thing. That's not a Catholic issue. That's not a Christian issue. We don't care about that. It was only when the government was going after the church for not desegregating their schools that Paul Weyrich was finally reached out to by Jerry Falwell. And the two of them single-handedly transformed Western Christianity from a religion that frowned on adultery and was very about giving money and charity to the poor to what it is today. A religion that opposes those very values, has no issues with adultery, believes that the poor should give to the rich with prosperity gospel. And their two main tenets are going after the LGBTQ and women's reproductive rights, which before the 1970s had nothing to do with the church. And they did start taking a huge part in U.S. politics with political groups like the Heritage Foundation. They started taking complete control over Congress at about the same time that Reagan and Nixon had opened the floodgates to money in politics. So you had all these senators and congressmen who were open for business. If you had the right amount of money, they would do whatever you wanted them to do. They were for sale. And the church had a lot of money and a vested interest in making more money and having more power. Now, a large misconception that people have is that the religious groups only target Republicans. That's not true. The Republicans and the Democrats really are just one party, masquerading as two. And you can see this at the National Prayer Breakfast when members of the DNC and the RNC meet together with each other and share donors and make money and do deals. And it's why we see arrangements like today with Kamala Harris being endorsed by Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, and 200 of the most anti-choice Republicans in Congress. Because they know the DNC is not going to do anything for women's rights. Because they've got deals behind closed doors. And make no mistake, this is not an indictment on Christianity. There are plenty of Christians who oppose these views here in the United States. And this is nothing like Christianity to the East and the South. They look at the West with horror. But it only took less than a decade to transform Western Christianity into the money-making, corrupt powerhouse that it is today. A sanctuary for pedophilia and rape. A sanctuary for greed, corruption, and bribery.